Hey guys, I'm on a little early. We're not going to start for like another 8 minutes. Just want to say hi. Can you guys all hear me? Those of you over in the chat. Normally I use headphones, but my baby literally ate them this morning. So I'm headphoneless, but I'm in my studio. So I think, okay, good. Hi, Tara. Yay! So don't mind me messing around. Well, we wait for 9:30 my time. It's early. Happy hump day. Okay. Oh, and for those of you already logged in, if you guys, I recommend taking notes on this. Oh, yes, my office. This is actually the current office, but we're getting a new one, and it's big. Jessica, hi. I didn't know. Do you use Ivy? No, Julie, you don't need Photoshop for this. I'm going to kind of show you everything. You will eventually want to get Photoshop, but just take notes. Take notes. And then I think Photoshop still does. Yeah, you too, Jessica. I think Photoshop still does like a week free or something like that. So hopefully with this class, you'll feel a little bit confident to kind of like jump into it and try it out. A lot of stuff that that I'm going to cover in a very short period of time, but at least I'm hoping to give you guys like a little bit of a background. Yes, Jessica, I'm glad you're new to Ivy. I love it because I'm horrible at doing the bookkeeping, and this makes me less horrible. Oh, yeah. Okay. So I guess while I'm waiting for 9:30, how many of you guys, I'm kind of just looking over at the chat on the side, how many of you guys come to Vegas for market? And yes, Tara provided the recording. This is recorded, so you guys can access it again, which you probably will want to because I'm just going to throw so much information out. You guys should come to Vegas for market. I'm actually thinking about possibly, since I'm getting a new location and it's going to be big, possibly actually hosting kind of like a Photoshop like boot camp. It'd probably be like 2 days around market time. I need to move into the new studio. But I just thought, since I'm in Vegas and a lot of people travel out here for market, that could be kind of cool, since it's one of those things where it's a lot easier to learn it if I'm like there with you guys kind of showing you. It gives you another excuse to come to Vegas. I think market, is it August? I think market is in August or July or August. July, there, the very end of July. Yeah, it's really, really hot, the summer market. It's like 100 gazillion degrees out here. So usually if I tell people they're going to do market, come to winter, but like this last winter was like storming, so that wasn't fun either. Yes, January. January is normally the better weather for market. Or, I mean, there's High Point as well. I actually only been to High Point twice. I think Vegas market is easier to navigate, but there's more stuff at High Point, so. Okay, almost time. I'm going to start right at 9:30, so. And don't mind me drinking coffee. It's early. Yes, what Tara just said over in the live chat on the right. Once I get going, I'm not going to be able to see the chat on the right-hand side of the screen. So there's an area below where you can ask questions, and that's where I'm going to go through and answer them at the end. Right now I can see the live chat because I haven't shared my screen yet. All right, it's 9:30, so we are going to get started. Let me go ahead and why? Oh gosh, this is not gonna be fun. Why is my screen, Tara? Why won't it let me share my full screen? It does this every time. Should I share application window? Maybe that'll work. Sorry guys, give me 1 second. Where is the share screen? Share, no, where did it go? Close that. Try this. Did that work? No. Put your, take your mouse. I should have just sorry guys, I should have troubleshot this. I thought I had this. Share screen. There. Bring it to the right side of the screen where there are 3 icons. It just won't. No. Okay, I'm gonna try it. Put the cursor in the top middle. Sorry, guys. Wait, where did share screen go now? Sorry. All right, share screen. Put the cursor. Okay. When the screen splits, hover your mouse on the right. Okay, hovering. Higher. Okay, click. 3 white. These things. Hide screen here. Hide screen, focus screen. No, I get hide screen, focus screen, and hide screen, focus screen, and close video. Focus screen. We are in. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let me go in here and let's get started. Sorry about the delay. I am 4 minutes late. Okay. Everybody can see that. There we go. Okay. Photoshop for interior design. Welcome, everybody. Sorry, I was having such a hard time. Apparently, focus screen means to share the whole screen, since you don't want to look at my face the whole time. So anyways, this is Photoshop for interior design. I'm going to cover a lot of different things in Photoshop quickly, just to kind of give you guys a background on what, on what you can do with it and how it can be useful for you guys. I mean, a lot of people, I don't know how many people on here use Photoshop for mood boards and things like that. That's really the best way to get started with it. I know there's programs out there online that you guys can use to make your mood boards, but I always recommend learning Photoshop, because the thing with Photoshop is that you don't have any limitations. There's no like banks of furniture. You can use whatever you want, make it look however you want, but there is a bit of a learning curve to it. So hopefully with this webinar, I'm going to kind of cover some of that and make it a little bit easier for you guys to kind of jump into it and start messing around with it and get good at it. So anyways, ooh, apparently I put a fade on. So I am Rebecca Zajac. My company is Design by Numbers. I also own, I'm splitting my company, so I'm also Rebecca Interiors as well right now. And I've been in business for the last maybe I'd say 3-4 years and have done very well here in Las Vegas. It's been kind of awesome for me. At one point I didn't love working in Las Vegas, but now it's kind of, I'm able to kind of dominate part of the market, which has been super awesome. And I am a member of Ivy, and I want to thank Ivy for hosting me for this webinar. And I will have some information about Ivy for those of you who aren't members to kind of take a look at that towards the end, because as an interior designer, I highly recommend it for the software stuff of what we do, because obviously we don't want to sit and do books all day long. We want to just design stuff. So anyways, that's a bit of a background on me. And so what we're going to kind of start with today is I'm going to go over some mood boards with you guys, how to do the mood boards. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just read through this slide, and then I'm going to hop into Photoshop while I am and actually show you live a little bit of how to do some of these things. So when you're doing your mood boards, which I think we all kind of know what those are, and by the way, I don't know if it's 2 words or 1 word. So I think I used 1 word some places and 2 words some places. I didn't get an A in English. I draw pictures. So sorry if I'm wrong, but I don't know if it's 1 or 2 words. I think it should be 1. Anyways, so when you're doing your mood boards, these, I mean, I like to call them digital mood boards. I feel like it's what everybody's using nowadays instead of like the old school pin boards, although some of us still use those. I personally don't, but you can if you still do. If it works for you, then go ahead and do it. But with mood boards now, a lot of times what we're doing is we're dragging images offline and things like that of furniture and grouping it together in like a Photoshop image, so that we can kind of portray the image. And I also like to say that like the mood boards are kind of like the precursor to your renderings. I don't do my renderings in Photoshop. I use rendering software for that, but I do some of the layering and pattern adding on in Photoshop afterwards, which I'm going to show you guys more towards the end. But those CGI renderings that you saw in the beginning, that is not created in Photoshop, although the tile backsplash was. So when you're working in Photoshop, you're working in layers. So it's almost like you have each image that you're dragging off of off of the internet or from your camera or wherever you have them is going to get layered into one image. So it's like overlapping a bunch of different pieces of paper, and then you can always put one in front of the other, one behind the other. You can change the size. Every image that you have, you want it to be independent of itself. So that way you can kind of go through and edit it. And then if you show the image to your client, they're like, oh, I don't love that sofa. You can take that sofa out and put a different one in. So that's the basic function of how Photoshop and almost all Adobe software works, is in layers. And some of you might already know about layers, but I just wanted to let you guys know, for those of you who don't know about how to use layers, like you need to learn your layers so that way you can kind of manipulate what you're working on. And then I also put a note in here where I said label your layers. I'm going to show you some of my old documents, and I don't. You should. I'm going to teach you that you should, because it's the way you need to do it. But I don't label my layers. I usually will end up with 50 gazillion layers, and I am sorting through them, and it's a big hot mess. And towards the end, if I'm going to do a presentation with a client and I need to be able to turn layers on and off, basically that means if I want to make it so that you can see something or not see something, then I will go label them and put them in folders and organize them and things like that. But you should really get in the habit, so you're not like me, and label your layers as you go, because then you're going to be able to find where the layers are. The other things I'm going to kind of show you guys is how to remove the background. This is a big one that I see, and I don't know if a lot of those online programs that do the mood boards for you guys do the background. Clipping software is kind of a difficult thing to do. So anyways, to remove the background, we're going to use 3 different ways to do it. You can use a magic wand, you can use a quick select tool, or there's also the pen tool, which allows you to kind of isolate anything if it's not an easy grab, if it's not like, if the background's kind of blurring into the image, or if there's like a lot of white or things like that. And I'm going to show you some tricks with the pen tool, because the pen tool in Photoshop is actually kind of difficult to learn to use. So I'm going to teach you really, really crudely how to do it. And then as you guys get better at it, then you can practice it and get better at it. But at least I don't want you to sit here and like get so frustrated and be like, oh my gosh, I can't use this tool, because it is one that it's just like, I think I hated it for like 3 years just because I wasn't good at using it. And I did use it very crudely, and you're going to see that in some of them. But even with a crude crop, it still works. So then the last thing we're going to teach you for mood boards is scale and distortion, or distorting your images. So when you're putting your images on the mood boards, and I've seen some mood boards, some people are better at it than others, and some people can make it look like an actual room, which is awesome. So when you're doing that, you want to keep scale in mind when you're building your mood board. You don't want to like, you know, put the bed in there and the lamp like 3 times bigger than the bed. I mean, obviously if it's an accessory, you probably want to make it bigger, but you want it in general to kind of have the right scale. Since you're playing with your patterns and your objects, you want to make sure that they all play together. So you want to kind of make the bed, you know, the proper scale to the nightstand, to the proper scale kind of to the rug, and things like that. So that way you get a good visual picture of, in your mood board, of what you're trying to portray. Especially if you're not doing renderings, your mood board will kind of act as your rendering. And then there's a tool called the Distort. I see some people know how to use this, some don't yet. This is a really, really, really great one. It allows you to make the rugs look like they're on the ground in your mood board, so they don't look like they're hanging on the wall. So if you know what I mean, if you grab a rug offline, it's like a flat image of it, and it's like, hey, I'm here. And you'll even have some clients, if you just do like a white background or the paint color background behind your mood board and layer things behind it, they'll be like, why is the floor blue? So there are tricks where you can kind of like bring in a floor and things like that. So that way everything has a place on the ground and it doesn't just look like a collage of images. And putting the rug on the ground helps a lot with that as well. So then if we kind of go over to here, so here, this is actually a really old mood board that I did. Man, this was like 3 years ago. But anyways, above is the mood board and below is the actual image of the room. And the reason I use this example is because it does look very similar. And you can see some of the grabs that I did for images have accessories on them, like the little bookcase that you saw in the last image was in the room. It's not in that view of the photograph. But I grabbed one offline where another, actually it's Joy Cho's room, I just knew that she had it, had all the accessories on it, so that way it didn't look super sterile in the mood board, because some mood boards will look sterile, and if you feel like your mood board's looking sterile, accessorize it, style it, treat it just like you would a room, because if it looks sterile, your client's going to look at it and be like, I don't know if I love it. But if you add some accessories or use some images where things have, you know, are styled, and some websites, they'll show like an actual product image and then they'll show another image of it styled in a room. And it just depends on the room that I'm doing, if I'm going to choose just the product image or if I'm going to choose the one that has a little bit of styling product on it to give life to the mood board. So the other things you want to do is you want to make sure your clients know, if you're just using mood boards, that they are not a rendering. You're basically using them to give them the feeling of the room and kind of like the overall look of the room is, but it's not a rendering, because you will get the clients that'll be like, it doesn't look like the picture. And you just have to, you know, let them know, like, you know, this is just kind of like, it's just screen grabs of different things. And I mean, you can see the teepee in the top image is different than the teepee in the lower image, but it still gives the same look. It's just, I think I actually wanted to get that teepee and I bought a different one. I honestly don't remember. The other thing you want to be careful of, and this is along the lines of the teepee, is furniture dupes. So basically when you're grabbing images for something that looks like something, if you're using a similar image in your nude board, in your nude board, that's a dirty little mood board. If you're using a similar image in your mood board, you want to make sure your client understands that that is an image that you put in there because it's similar to the actual product. If for some reason you weren't able to get an image of what you are proposing for their room in there, usually the only times I'll do it is if the client has like a sectional and we're keeping it, and then I'm designing around it. Maybe I couldn't get a good photo of it in their house and it wasn't looking good on the board, and I don't know where it's from, then I might grab something similar. But I really try not to put a dupe for something that I'm proposing for the client in the mood board, because you don't want them down the road when you install it be like, this isn't what's in the picture. Make sure your client understands that. And I make sure my clients understand it all the time. And then I feel like some of them still don't. But I mean, now I pretty much just don't do it, but you will run into times where you need to. So just be aware of that, because the better your pictures are, the more the clients are going to expect for your work to look like them. And then the last thing with Photoshop is practice, practice, practice. You guys are going to see some different ways and techniques to achieve these mood boards. But with Photoshop, there's a million different ways to do the same thing. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the way that I'm teaching you is better. It's the way that I do it. And you just kind of have to practice to get good at it. Don't expect to be really fast at it right away. But if you work at it for a week, like, you'll get pretty fast at it. I mean, we can usually put together mood boards in less than like 20 minutes once we have all the images grabbed. So you can get really efficient at it, but you won't get efficient at it unless you practice. And then the other thing is just, use Google. If you are trying to do something in Photoshop, like you can see I kind of did the custom paint treatment on that mood board above. If you're trying to do something to achieve a look of something you're trying to represent for a room that you're designing in Photoshop, and I haven't covered it here, but you have a good basic foundation of how Photoshop works, ask Google. Google will tell you there are a gazillion tutorials online, whether they're written tutorials or video tutorials and things like that. Somebody has a tutorial out there that's going to show you how to do what you're looking to do. Okay, so we're not going to get there yet. All right, so now I'm going to jump into, wait, can you guys see? You can see my screen. Okay, let's go into actually Photoshop. And we're going to go into my hamburger here. Okay, I'm looking at this on two screens to make sure you guys can see this okay, because the way that a Mac does, the way that I work on Photoshop is I make it so you can see my background behind it, but I'm going to make it easy for you guys to see it. So I use the current version of Photoshop. There are older versions. I think you get a week free if you download it. So I always say, if you're getting it for free for a week, really take the time to kind of jump in there and use it. If you don't want to invest, I think Photoshop is now a monthly thing. But if you don't want to invest in the monthly fees, you can buy the older versions. I'm sure people are selling them. I think CS5 or CS6 is the last version you can actually get that you can install to your computer that isn't like an automatic download. Mine's Creative Cloud, so it's like it automatically updates and stuff on my computer. And I do, like, once you get good at it, I always say, it's worth getting the more current version because you're going to get the more fun things to do. So anyways, this little hamburger here, this is going to be my representation of how your layers work for those of you who've never used it before. So you can see over on the right-hand side, you're going to have a layers palette. You want to always be able to see this. And when you download Photoshop, you're going to be able to see it. If there's anything in your window is what you're looking at that you can't see. If for some reason you closed it on your Photoshop or something like that, up at the top, you're going to see window. Window is basically what you see. So it's pretty intuitive like that. Like, oh, duh, I want to see it. And then you can come down here and this is like, you've got your layers and then libraries and swatches. Like, ones that you're going to want to be able to see are layers and probably swatches if you're going to be using colors and things like that. So that's kind of what you want to be able to see here. So if you can't see it, this is where you can see it. And then if you still can't figure it out, there's always help or Google to kind of help you find it. So with your layers, the one thing that you want to remember, like I said before, is that each layer has its own because it is basically everything is like a layer on top of each other. Everything is its own piece of paper. So there are different elements to this hamburger, and what you can see is what's laying on the top. So the bread is on the top, and then below it you have all these different things. So you can kind of go through it. If I take my bread off, then we can see there's ketchup, onions, cheese, there's the meat, and then there's, I can't spell lettuce. I couldn't figure it out, so it's called salad. So the lettuce and the bread on the bottom. And so if you want to go through, say you're organizing your mood board and you're like, why isn't my coffee table in front of my sofa? Over here on your layer palette, you can actually grab it just by clicking on the, ooh, I double clicked it. By clicking, and you can drag it above. And now you can see that my onions are on top of my, my ketchup. So that's just kind of how you're going to, each thing, like you're going to have a sofa, you're going to have a coffee table, you're going to have a lamp, you're going to have all your different things are going to be here. So if you need to change what you're bringing to the front, I think the old, like the online software and stuff says like bring to front. This is going to be like the same thing. Like you can put it in front. So like, obviously if you have a rug, like let's say this hamburger patty is the rug, you're going to want that all the way towards the bottom, because everything's going to be sitting on top of it. So now I actually put that behind the lettuce or salad. And if I take, and you can see these little eyeballs right here, I can turn things on and off. So like, even if I decide, oh, that rug looks horrible, but that's the one the client really likes, so I need to show them that it looks horrible. You can leave that image in there and then just turn it off with the eyeball. So just like the window is what you see, the eyeball is also what you see. So let's say like the salad and the meat patty are both rugs, and this is like, let's say we want the meat rug, we don't want the salad rug, we turn these guys off above it, and we're showing this beautiful room. We're going to call this the hamburger room to the client. We can be like, okay, so this is the ugly rug that you picked, but I think this rug is better, and then you can illustrate that by placing those two things in there. So that's just kind of how you work with your layers. So everything you're going to want to do is make sure everything, don't join your layers. Make sure everything is independent of itself. And then if you look over at the icons on the far right, you kind of see like everything has like a little checkerboard. Actually, let me do that. See how it has a checkerboard right there? The checkerboard means there's no background on the image. If you save something as a JPEG, which is what we're all used to doing, a JPEG will automatically save an image with a white background if it has no background to it. A PNG is your new, and if you drag logos and stuff offline, they're going to usually be a PNG. PNGs will save your, so if like you clip something out and you take the background out, you don't want to save it as a JPEG image because it's going to put that white background back on there for you. If you're like saving it to a folder, you want to save it as a PNG. If you save it as a PNG, which behaves just like a JPEG, it just doesn't have a background. So that way, if you're going through and cropping all these images, they're not going to have backgrounds on you. So that way you don't have that like white border around your stuff. And then on this image below, you can see that the bottom layer, layer one is the white background. Usually you want to call these background. A lot of times they'll be a locked layer. If you go take a Photoshop class, they'll always be like, leave your bottom layer locked, never unlock it. I always unlock mine because I don't like to do what people tell me to do. But if you're just learning, sometimes it's a good idea to keep that bottom layer locked because that's your background image, because I mean, this might be your paint color or your floor or something like that in your mood board. So before I jump more forward with showing you guys how to create a mood board, a couple little tips on how to manipulate things, and I'm just going to use it while I have this hamburger here. So over here are your tools, and then if you look next to your tools, there are tiny, tiny little arrows. So if you like take it and hold it down, you're going to see that there's like two tools in there. There's a lot of tools. So I'm just going to show you the tools that really you need for mood boards, because we could be here for hours. So some of the things, so a shortcut to get back into your arrow up here, which is what you're going to use to kind of move everything around, is V. So you can either click up here or you can hit V, and the way that I remember that is V. It looks like an arrow. So that is going to be your tool that you need to be on in order to grab anything. Now, the other thing, a big one where people get confused, is up here in your top corner. And I believe it's the same for CS5 and CS6 if you're using an older version. You have something called an auto select. So I usually keep auto select on most of the time when I'm working, but sometimes I have to take it off and put it on to start. And then you'll find when you need to turn it off as you use it. So auto select, it does not come defaulted on. It's going to come defaulted off. So what happens is, say I want to grab this piece of salad or lettuce from my hamburger, but if you look over at my layer palette, I'm actually highlighted on the bread top. If I go to grab that, see, I'm clicking on the lettuce, but I'm actually only going to be able to move the layer that I have active on the right-hand side. Because if I want the salad, I have to actively click on salad, and then I can grab it. But even if I grab off of it, it's going to grab it. Auto select is going to be your friend. I feel like this is one that takes a lot of frustration off people. If you hit auto select, that means that automatically whatever I click is going to become the active layer. So if I want to grab the top of the bun, I can move it to the side, and without having to click over on the side of where all your layers are, I can just grab the cheese. See how it jumps from cheese to salad to the hamburger? I can just grab, like, let's say I hate onions. So I'm going to take the onions and I'm just going to move them away. So it's going to allow you, when you're working with your mood board, if you're like adjusting things to make it look pretty, that you have auto select on. So that way you can grab those things and put them wherever you want them without having to sit here and jump layers, which is probably why I don't label things, because once you learn to do auto select, labeling just kind of becomes monotonous, but you should label it because it's a good habit. So those are the couple. Oh, and then the other thing I wanted to show you guys is how to change scale, because we can do that with the hamburger. So let's say I want to get the bread top out of the way. I'm going to take the eyeball off, and let's say I really, really like cheese. So how do you make this cheese bigger? There's a shortcut on here. It's going to be Command or, gosh, if you're a PC user, I think it's Control is for you, but it's Command T on a Mac, or it's up in Image, Edit, Transform. Over here, you're going to see Scale, Rotate, Skew, Distort, Perspective. These are all the things that are going to change your size. So if you do Control T and just remember it as it being transform, you're going to get your scale in there, and then you can see I can like make it bigger or smaller. So let's say I like cheese, I'm going to make it bigger. You can do that. Now, if you want to keep it, like, obviously if you're doing furniture, you don't want to like change the size of it. Like, you want to keep it locked into the same proportions. So when you're dragging it for scale, hold down your shift key. Your shift key is going to keep it locked into like a 1:1 ratio. So you don't lose, like, say something has a pattern on it, you don't skew the pattern, because you definitely don't want to do that. Or you can end up with something like this. So hold shift down, drag it to whatever size works for you. And then let's say it's a rug and it's vertical and you need it to go horizontal. If you're under transform, Control T, you can see here is in the corner, it shows like this is where I make it bigger or smaller. If I hover my mouse out slightly more, you get a little turny arrow. That's going to spin it. So you just click down and you can spin it all the way around, figure out which direction you like it. And then when you're all done, hit enter or return. Sorry, I know nothing about PCs now, guys. So if you're using a PC, I don't know if it's called, I think it's called enter on PC, but hit enter or return, and that's going to lock your change. The last little thing I want to show you before we jump into actually doing a mood board is if you mess up, you can go to edit undo. So undo is going to be Control Z on a PC, or Command Z, but you actually don't want to do undo. You want to do what we call step back. So in Photoshop, it's going to log automatically the last 20 different things that you have done in there. So if you undo, you're just undoing or redoing. You're just stepping one step back, one step forward, but you can actually step back a whole bunch because it remembers like the last 20 changes that you've made in your history. I think I actually have mine set to higher. So to do that, you actually want to use the step back. See, you can see up here you have undo, and then you have step forward and step back. Step back on a Mac is going to be Command Option Z, and if you look at your keyboard, it makes a little triangle in the corner. You're just going to get really good at doing this, and so you can just sit there and keep hitting it, and it's going to keep going back to like what you did before, as opposed to just undo and moving forward. So, and then if you forget what the shortcuts are, you can always go up here and use this. So like say you step back to a certain point and then you're like, oh gosh, I want to go forwards. step forward, don't undo. Because I know everyone's used to doing undos, but in Photoshop, you want to step forward, step back, because it's basically like saving like 20 different undos, which is really, really nice. All right, so that is the hamburger. So let's get into doing a mood board in here really fast. So I kind of have one that I've been working on. This is actually a client of mine that I've been working on. And I actually have like the rendering to show you guys afterwards of like how this all works. So on this, basically you can see over on the right that I did not label any of my layers, which I should, but I didn't. So I'm like showing you guys how not to do this, but at least you can kind of see how I'm working with it. So every single little thing on here is independent of itself. I've just gone through, grabbed images off the internet, brought them into Photoshop, removed the background, and then started to put them in here. So let me kind of show you how to do that. Let's take the sofa out of here because that's one where I'm going to have to use an edit tool. And I'm actually going to jump into the internet, and I think I put it right here. So here is the sofa that the client actually currently has from Room and Board. It's right here. Yeah, so I can grab it. So let's say they have the blue, it's the navy color. They have this one. So here's the color. So let's say you're looking online and you're looking to propose a sofa, or it's the sofa the client already has, and it's this one. You're like, okay, this is what I want to work with. If you just grab, and like I said, this might be different on a PC, and I apologize if you are on a PC. If you're on a PC, buy a Mac. Let's just put it up there. Photoshop just, for me, works better on a Mac. Pretty much any of your Adobes do. I feel like they're like Mac intuitive. But if you are on a PC and you're having trouble, at the end of this, ask me a question. I will try to help you guys figure out what your shortcuts are. But if you are on a Mac, you can grab and drop, like, whee, look at it go. You can grab your images. Some images on websites, and the websites need to stop this, you can't just drag and drop because like it gets bigger and it doesn't allow you to. There are different ways to grab those images, and I'll kind of cover that really fast. But for this one, I can drag it and I can actually bring it over Photoshop and just let go. And it opens up, there she is, in Photoshop. So I can see it over here. And then if you are having another problems doing that, you can always save it. Like I say, like put a folder or save it to your desktop and then clean your desktop up afterwards. If you right click, and I believe this is the same for PC, if you right click on your image, you can save image as, that's going to save your image as the JPEG or the PNG. Most images are going to be JPEGs off the internet. Most logos will be PNGs. But if you hit save image as, you're going to be able to save your image as a JPEG to your desktop as whatever you want to save it. And then if that's the case, you can see, where did it go? Here it is. So then it saved it to my desktop. I can take that image and I can bring it into Photoshop. So if you are having problems getting images into Photoshop, that is how you do it. So then now we have it in here. And what I want to do is, first of all, we notice it's teeny, teeny, tiny. So I need to make it bigger. There's shortcuts for it, but for the sake of this not being 40 million hours long, I'm going to grab this magnifying glass, very easy to see, and make it bigger so I can edit it. Sometimes you're going to find, like, per graphic designers, never enlarge an image bigger than it is because it pixelates it. But for the purpose of what we do, there might not be images to the scale that you want it. I do enlarge images. Sometimes it pixelates it a little bit, but it's going to get your point across. This isn't being printed and framed on the wall. Although if your client does do that, let me know. That would be kind of awesome. So if you see here, now we have the sofa. I need to put the sofa from this window into this window so that I have it in there. So we need to move it over. If you just download Photoshop and haven't like changed your settings and things like that, I think automatically it's going to put it like this, where you have these little tabs at the top. If that's the case and you're like, how do I get it to the other one because it's on a tab, just grab your tab and drag it. Like if you can't figure out how to do it, try to drag and drop first, because usually, I wouldn't say usually, sometimes that'll solve the problem. So you want it, I kind of put my guys, like when I'm doing it, adjacent to each other like this. And then you want to grab your arrow tool, or V, if you hit V on your keyboard, that's your shortcut, and bring that sofa over into Photoshop. So you can see it automatically gives it its own layer. Because I'm not labeling, it's labeled layer 23, but because I want to show you a good way of doing it, if you need to label this, if you double click it, it's going to give you the text box, and you can be sectional. And then you can label it what it is in case you have to file through your layers to get to it. So clearly it is too small, but here's what I want to tell you guys about removing the background. If I make this guy bigger, and if you guys remember, you're going to transform. So either be on your active layer over here. If you're not on your active layer, if you have your auto select on, you can click it. You can either go to Command T or Control T or Edit Transform, which is over here, but I'm going to do the shortcut because it's 10 times easier. You're going to get your little box to make it bigger. So let's make it bigger, right? Oh, wait, why is my sofa all mushed? Hold your shift key down so that way you can drag it bigger. So you can see that, and then once I get it where I want it, hit return, and now your sofa is how you want it. But let me see, now my sofa is kind of behind this stuff, but let's say I want to put it in front, and for the sake of showing you this, I'm going to put it in front of everything. I'm going to grab my layer and just drop it to the top. See how it has that white background? This is one that actually is going to be easy to deal with because it's just white. You don't want this, because if you have this and you're trying to place your room, then you're like, oh wait, I can't layer things and make it look cool and layered. Like you can see, I just want this tree next to the sofa, but there's this white border. What you're going to want to do is remove that. So I actually want to remove that, excuse me, before I put it into my mood board. So you have 3 different ways of doing this. You have over here, you have your magic wand, which is W shortcut for wand. If you click on that, you get this little magic wand looking cursor. If you click on, now because this image has a white image, it's going to be easy to do. You will run into some images that are not so easy, but if you click on this, notice you get these little ants dancing all the way around it, and it's showing you the white background, and be like, okay, I want to get rid of that. Well, what's the easiest way to get rid of that? Well, you just hit delete. Oh, why is it asking me this? Fill, content aware. I don't know what any of this is. Well, I do, but I'm going to pretend that I don't, because this might happen to you guys. Hit cancel if it does that. You can't remove the background of the image if your image is locked. See this little lock over here? So what you want to do is you want to unlock your image. So the easiest way to do that before you put your little dancing ants on it is to click the lock. If you just click on it, now it's unlocked. So let's try that again. So we use our magic wand or W, click on the background. Now we want to get rid of it and hit delete, and now we have checkerboard. So that means that the image is deleted. So now we want to move the image over to the mood board. So now we don't have that ugly white border behind there. So if you go to what I told you guys you needed, your arrow tool or V to move it over, see how it's not grabbing the sofa there? It's just like getting this weird outline. Now, because I grabbed something and moved it, I'm going to go step back, and there's my little ants again. Right now I still have the background selected. So you have to tell it, be like, okay, I'm done deleting the background. I want the sofa now. So you want to deselect the background, which is going to be Command or Control D for select, because you highlight with your wand tool to select it, but then you need to deselect it. And I believe somewhere up in here, I don't know, it's been so long since I've used it without the shortcut. Don't even worry about it. Use the shortcut, Command or Control D, deselect. If your ants aren't dancing on the part that you want it to dance on, you have the wrong thing selected. So go back into your arrow, and now because you have the auto select, and the only actual image on here is the sofa, and I grab it. See how, hey, there it is. So grab it, drag it, drop it over, and there it is in here. And you can see when I overlap, I no longer have that white box. So now we want to make it bigger. So Command T is going to be to scale it. Hold your shift key down, drag it bigger, and then hit enter or return, and that is where you want it. So like if I'm putting this back where I had it, which was like right here, now you can see, well, it's not really, I can't see the pillows on top of it. It's not in the right order. The layer's on the top. I want the layer behind some things. So grab your layer over on the side and bring it behind enough of the items so it lays where you want it. So now it's behind the pillows, but I want it to be behind a little bit more, which is where the tree is. So if I bring it, oh, but see now my my little tension pole is in front. We want that behind, but I'm behind the pot. So if I want to put the tension pole behind, keep your auto select on, click on it so it jumps to that layer, and drag that behind your sofa, and now that's behind it. I hope all of that's making sense. Like I said, this takes practice. So then once you are done with your sofa image that you dragged in and it is now in your mood board, you can just get rid of it. I don't save it because there's no reason to save this. It's with the background removed, it's where I want it, so don't save. So now I'm going to show you guys how to do the rug really fast, and then I'm going to show you guys how to do a crew crop. And then with those tools, you guys should be able to start kind of moving, building your mood boards in Photoshop. So if I go in here and I go to my rug, let's say we're using a Laloy, it sounds so fancy, Laloy rug, and I want this one. So with this one, again, you can right click, save image as, or if you want, you can just take it, drag it, drop it in, and it's going to pop up in Photoshop. If for some reason you are on a website that doesn't allow you to save your image as or drag and drop it in there, you might have to use a print screen, and that will save the image on your desktop as a JPEG, but it should save your whole screen, and then you're going to use the same isolation techniques to isolate your image. So, but then once you have the print screen, just take that, drag that in there, and just use your quick select, use your magic wand, or use your pen, which I'm going to show you the other two in a second, drag it in there. So over to the right, you're going to have quick select or magic wand. We used the magic wand before because if it's all one color, it's really easy to grab it. Quick select is the same way, but with quick select, let's say there's like a variety of 2 different colors, like there's some shading in there. It will kind of select the more of a broad spectrum of colors. So here it's white, so it's gonna, you can see how when I start to drag it, the little ants are just a little area, but if I keep dragging it, it's gonna be like, oh, we wanna get the whole white area. So we'll do that. I wanna delete it. Oh wait, I can't delete it because I didn't unlock it. So you wanna unlock it, delete that, and then you have your checkerboard over there. We wanna do it over here, delete. So when you guys are editing your images and isolating them from the background, play around with your quick select and your magic wand to see when one is better than the other. And then you'll find when you like, you know, which one's going to use for what. And I'm going to show you guys a messy background image to use the pen tool in just a second. So now that we have just the rug here, we want to bring it into Photoshop like we did with our sectional. So you want to put it on V for your arrow, or grab your arrow, drag and drop, and now we are in here. Before we move on, I'm going to go ahead and close this so I don't have a gazillion windows open. And now we want to play with our rug. Well, it's clearly the wrong scale, and it's sitting on top of things. So let's go over to our layers palette, grab it, and put it where we want it. So now it's underneath the table. It's underneath the, it's pretty much underneath everything. So it's kind of like, oh, now my rug is on the floor, but it's the wrong scale. So let's go ahead and make this bigger. Command T or transform, grab it. Now this has a pattern, so make sure you hold your shift key down on this one especially. You don't want to change the proportion of your rug because you're going to skew your pattern. So let's say where I want to make it about that big. And then enter or return, and that is where we want it. And then we're going to kind of grab it to where, oh, see, now it's sitting on top of this. I know what I did. Okay. I'm not going to show you that because that's getting way too far into it. But I'm just going to turn this off so it doesn't confuse you guys. I have a layer effect on that to take the background off, but I don't want to show you that. It's too much for one day. So let's go back into here. So now we have our rug. So now I want to make it look like the rug is on the ground because right now it looks like the pictures do, like it's sitting on the wall. So edit. Go under. Make sure your layer is highlighted. So the rug that we're using is highlighted. Go under edit. Transform, and then what we're normally doing is scaling, but we actually want to sit here and distort it. You can use a perspective. I usually just use a distort because the distort doesn't lock you into ratios. You can move it how you want it. So transform, distort, no shortcut for this. Maybe there is, I've never found it. And now we have, it looks like the binding box that we had when we were scaling, but if you drag it, you're going to see I'm skewing it now. So you want to just kind of sit here and be like, let's make this rug look like it's sitting on the ground. So just practice with this as you guys work with it. Sometimes I'm going to do the rugs like this. So they're kind of like a, what do you call this, parallelogram? Sometimes depending on the look of the mood board, I'm going to want to make it more trapezoidal. I feel so official with these terms. And then you're going to want to put it and just keep, now, you know, right now, obviously my My coffee table is not sitting on it, but I think I'm kind of liking that look for the rug because it looks like it's sitting on it. So then hit enter, but I need to make it a little bit bigger. Well, when you're in distort, you can't actually scale it bigger. It's just going to distort the image. So let's go ahead and enlarge it. So we'll go back into transform for scale, Control T, and then I can just kind of, you know, oh wait, don't want to do that. Control T, let's grab it from the corner holding shift, and it's going to scale it together and then put it there. So now you can see that now my rug looks like it's sitting on the ground underneath my furniture. Doesn't have to be perfect. It's still a mood board. It's not a rendering, but it gives you a better visual than if I were to leave it like that, because this is more what it's going to look like to your client's eye when it's in the room. It's going to be sitting on a horizontal surface. So then if you guys find that you want to put, like, obviously if you're going to do a color, a paint color, you can grab your paint color. If you go online, be like Ben Moore Gray Owl. You can get the actual, I mean, these aren't going to be perfect, always show swatches, but you can be like, here's Gray Owl. So then you can take this image, just like all the other images, grab it, drag it, drop it into Photoshop, and then you can use this image and change the background color. So how do you do that? Well, the way that you make this color the active image is an eyedropper or the letter I. So if you hit that, your dropper is right here. Click on it, it's going to become your active color down here. So then if you go into your mood board, go to your background, and then you're going to want to fill it. If you just downloaded Photoshop, you're going to have this little area. It's going to call the gradient tool, or G. If you hover it and then go down, you're going to find your paint bucket, which looks like the old school, like, you know, paint that we're all used to if we're old like me. And with your paint bucket and your background layer highlighted, you can fill the background. Now I have my paint color. Now you can see some of the areas here where I've been working on this file and I haven't removed the white. So I can go through with my magic wand and remove those white areas if I want to clean it up when I'm all done. But that's how you would do your paint. Let's say I want to put a floor in here because the client can't figure out why everything's floating in outer space. I don't usually do this for mood boards, but some people do if they're not using rendering. I will just find a wood looking floor in Google Images. So just look up Photoshop, like wood floor or wood floor pattern. It's going to jump to things and be like, oh, look at all these images of wood floors. So let's say I want to put this one in here. Let it load, grab it. You can just grab it, drag it, drop it. Oh, that's going to look real ugly with this color scheme that I have going on. But let's go. But see here, now I can tell, like, this floor looks gross with this because I'm playing with it in Photoshop. So in real life, it's going to look gross too. But go V or your arrow tool, grab your wood floor, drag and drop it in here. And then I'm going to close these out because I'm going to get too many. Then I just need to scale this. Now it's already kind of sitting behind everything. So let's just go to transform, Control, Command T. This one, I'm not going to hold the shift key down because I'm just going to transform it to the scale that I want it. Yeah, the wood planks are super big. This is not a rendering. I'm just giving you the look. Maybe this is about the color of the floor, and I'm putting it there for representation. So that is basically how you manipulate your mood boards and how you build them. And I know that this was a lot of information all at one time. You guys are probably going to have questions, but this gives you a basic of how to get your images, drag them in there, transform them, and move them around. There's lots of other fun things you can do to them over here. But for now, just get used to just grabbing your images, taking the background out, and dropping them in. The last one I want to show you really quick is how to use the pen tool. So I know West Elm uses, what do you call it? Styled images in their photos. So let's go in here and let's say, come on, computer. Let's say we want to do this guy, for example. Please be an image that I want to grab. Okay, so we'll grab this one. So we're going to grab it and drop it into Photoshop. This one, now let's say all I really want is the pillow. Say you took this picture on your phone or something like that, or you can't find a good image of the pillow and there's stuff around it. Use your magnifying glass and zoom in on it. Actually, let's not do the pillow, let's do this throw, so it's a little bit harder for me to pull out. So if I use my magic wand tool, or W, that we were using before, and click, like it's not going to give me the background very well because there's all these different colors on here. So then you can go in, quick select may work on this. Quick select, if I kind of go through, you can see it's kind of grabbing as I'm just holding the button down and dragging it on the color. Quick select actually would work pretty well for that, but you can still see I don't have all of it. So there you go. So like quick select could work to grab this throw out of here. So if I got a little piece of the sofa there, but if I grab it, I can bring it in here and be like, hey, throw. Oh, I was going to put it on the couch, but I can't because it's sitting behind. So don't forget, grab your layer, bring it to the front, put it on your sofa, and there it's like sitting on the arm. It's like a mini little throw, but let's not make it mini. Let's make it bigger. Let's scale it up, Control, Command T. Now, if you want to remove this little area where I grabbed that piece of the couch, the easiest thing to do is use your eraser tool, which is this little guy over here, or E. Ooh, see how big my eraser is? So you can change the size of it up at the very top. This is going to be your active bar for your tools. Or actually, let's just use that for the sake of not giving you guys too much information. So let's make the size down. Now it's much smaller. Now I can just go and just erase it. Now, if I was on a different layer, I would have erased my sofa if that would have not been good. Make sure you're on the active layer, the layer that has what you're trying to erase on it, and then erase it off. The other thing you can do if the quick select isn't working, deselect, Command D, get rid of those dancing ants. We're going to grab it again. We're going to use the pen tool, which is P for pen. So say like this is really the same color gray as this. It's not grabbing. I'm not able to use the magic wand or the quick select to grab this image here. So your pen tool creates what we call a path. So if I kind of click, see how it like, I'm like literally drawing around it. And then you can make a selection, and I'm gonna show you guys this in a second. And then I can tell the computer this is the shape that I want. The other thing that the pen tool does is if you grab it and you grab another one and you pull, it gives you a curve. This is what takes a lot of practice because it works in tangents. Don't worry about doing this right away. You can still get your shape without doing this. If you want to get really good at the pen tool, start to, watch a YouTube video on how to use the pen and use your tangents and be able to grab it, because then you can get really awesome at it. But for the sake of this and what we're doing, we're going to get real crude with it. So take your pen tool and put your little point on the edge of what you're doing. And literally, I know anybody who knows Photoshop is going to kill me for doing this. Just go around the edges like this. And just be like, this is what I want, and give me it. So we're going to go around really, really crudely. We're not going to worry about dragging, dropping, making curves, making tangents, any of that stuff. We're just going to grab this image. Oops. And if you mess up, don't forget your go back, which is Command Option Z, Control Option Z for PC. And it'll just step you back one or two. So then when you have your whole line, then you want to go back the one you started. And if you look, I don't know if you can see it on this, but next to the pen tool, it has a circle. That means you're closing your line. So it's a line and now it's a shape. Once you have your shape, you want those dancing ants around your shape. So right click. If you don't have your right click activated on your Mac, I suggest doing that because otherwise you have to use Option click, but right click does work on Macs. And then what you want to do is you want to do something called a stroke path. I guess that could be really dirty if you wanted to, but let's go ahead and stroke it. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. I am just in the wrong area. We want to make selection. Where is my mind on Wednesday? You want to make this a selection. You want those dancing ants around it. Make selection. And then you're going to get this little box that's going to come up, and it's going to ask you all these questions that you probably don't understand. What you want to do, the one that you want to remember, don't click anything else, is this feather radius. Basically, the feather radius means it's going to blur the edge. It's like a filter for your crop because you did a really crappy crop. We're going to blur it, just like if you're having a really bad makeup day and you want to put an Instagram photo, you blur your face on filters. So let's blur our edge. I will usually do a feather radius of 1 to 2, depending on the image. Let's go ahead and do 2 just so you can see it a little bit more. So we're going to blur the edge at 2 pixels and click OK. Now we have the dancing ants around our throw, and we're going to bring it into our mood board. So I can't bring it in. I'm on the pen tool right now. So either click on your arrow or hit V, and now you can grab it. So, and you can see how the edges of it look soft right there. When I pull it, it's kind of like feathered from the sofa as opposed to a hard crop. It's because we feathered it. So if I bring it in here, and now it's again too small, so let's go ahead and make it bigger. Command T, Shift, and enlarge it. You can see, I'm gonna just zoom in on this for you guys. See that feather on there? You can see it right here. We feathered that edge, so it's not a hard crop and it just flows better. This one has a little bit more of a harder crop than the feathered. There you can see them next to each other on that background. See how this one's a little jaggedier and then the feather? So like, depending on the image, I might use this instead of using the quick select because it gives you that nice feathered edge. So that way you can put that in the image. This one looks like poop, so let's go ahead and just don't delete it, leave it in there in case you want it later. Just turn it off. And like I said, zoom in, zoom out is over here, or at the top, you're gonna have your plus and your minus. I'm using a shortcut for it. So that is how you do a crop with the pen tool. You will find that using the pen tool and using that feather will be super, super useful for you. If you never get good at the pen tool and you use that crude crop that I showed you, if anybody makes fun of you for doing it, you didn't learn it from me, maybe you did, maybe that's a great thing. I think it looks fine for what we're using it for. Any graphic designer is going to tell you, what are you doing? But I think for me, it looks great. So then what I usually do after this is we actually build our design in our mood board and then we go in and render it. So this is a rendering of the room. It's actually not a great rendering because I'm still working this and this is not proper. They're actually looking really blurry, but this is us in scale. We actually build it in SketchUp, put everything in there and start to like really put it into the room. But you can Photoshop over the top of this too, add patterns, all that good stuff. So that is how you do a mood board. Let me jump back into, close this out. Here. Okay. So I feel like this is going to be really long. I'm going to try to make this quick. So after you have that, like I said, biggest one, practice, practice, practice. Grab your images, bring them in, manipulate them, remove the background, get really good at it, and you're going to find it super useful. The other thing you can do with your Photoshop is creating presentation boards. So if you see the top one, that's the presentation board where I just grabbed product images and grouped them together for the image below, which is the rendering of this kitchen. You can create templates on this, and I'm going to show you really quickly how to do that. If you create a template, you give yourself a cohesive look to all your presentations. Use the same fonts. Like you want like a main font and then like a font for like your text and things like that. You want to keep it simple. Don't use any super calligraphy fonts. You want it easy to read. I usually use a sans serif font, which just means it's just a very basic font. Nice and clean. I use almost the same fonts for everything. I have two that I go to. Find your favorite two and use them. You don't need to get fancy with the fonts. Fancy fonts doesn't mean that you're an amazing designer. Let's, just pretty fonts. Just find ones that work for you. And then when you're layering your images in your template, you want to make sure that the images are balanced and even your presentation board looks balanced. How do you know it looks balanced? Well, look at it. And I mean, we're all designers, so we should know if things look good. If it looks good to you, then that means it's representing your design. So just make sure that you can see scale on this is off. I have a big faucet, which is huge compared to the range, but as far as this is concerned, I didn't want this to be to scale because it would be too small on this board. So here's where you can kind of on a presentation board cheat your accessories a little bit more, because I want the client to be able to see that image as opposed to see it to scale. I have it to scale in the rendering. I want the client to see the product so they'd be like, yes, I love it, and we buy it, and then we all make money, and then we're all happy. And you can see some of the images I've actually grabbed off of the websites where I show it installed. Sometimes I'll use an installed image if I think it represents the product better than an image of just the 3 tiles, because especially with these type of thin glazed tiles, if I showed the 3 tiles, I don't think it really represents what the tile would look like. And in fact, sorry. In fact, this is not in the rendering, this background. I did this in Photoshop because I wasn't able to render the texture the way that I wanted it. So yes, my renderings have Photoshop layered over the top of them, so that I really, really a good interpretation for the client of what this tile looks like applied to the image. And I'm going to show you guys briefly kind of how to do that. I mean, it takes a while to get good at it, but I want to give you the idea so you can start playing with it. So anyways, that is what a presentation board looks like. So a lot of times if you're not using renderings, I'll use a presentation board and a rendering, and I won't actually show the mood board to the client. I use those as working images for me before we render. But if you're not using renderings and you're using mood boards instead of renderings, which is fine, and presentation boards, you know, this is what your presentation, highlight the products, you know, kind of like your pin boards, and then use the mood board to kind of show it to scale what it's going to look like in the room. And then the other thing you want to remember when you're building these boards is negative space. And I always say, keep it simple, stupid. A lot of times, things that make people good designers is you want to be able to edit yourself back. There's not a lot going on this presentation board. And I don't want a lot going. I don't want to overwhelm the client with like a lot of stuff. Like I haven't like been like, oh, this bowl for the countertop and maybe some oranges in it and maybe this cutting board. I just want to put enough information on there so that the client looks at the rendering, looks at the presentation board and be like, yes, I want this. And they don't want to change anything, which is always makes our lives easier. So you just want to keep it clean. It doesn't need a lot of stuff. Obviously, if you find that there's holes and stuff in it and it looks like there needs to be more stuff, play with your scale on it, you know, with your transform in Photoshop and adjust it so it looks nice. And then you can add your text in there and all that good stuff. But you don't need to show off your skill like you're us. Like when you get good at Photoshop, you don't want to be like, look how amazing I am at Photoshop. Look at all these cool things that I did. Don't, because we're not trying to advertise to the client that we can use Photoshop. We're trying to advertise the design. So feature the products, not your amazing skills after you get done with this webinar. And here is another, I don't use these that much anymore, but just another format for like a presentation board. And this is even before this would be like the very preliminary. Maybe this is a client, well, actually this was a client. This was a client that was like, I have no idea what I want. You tell me, which is sometimes the hardest thing to do because they do know what they want. For some reason, they want you to read their brain. So maybe you just need to start off with some inspiration images and some things that you're thinking about. So this is really old, but here's like a design concept. So you can do a presentation like this to a client before you actually jump into designing the actual room. This one's kind of wordy. I'm not a big fan of putting a ton of words on here. Obviously I did because this was my work at some point. I'm terrible at writing. I'm terrible at spelling. And I just find it's an opportunity for a client to be like, well, what is she doing? She doesn't know how to spell mood board or lettuce. So anyways, I don't tend to put a lot of writing on here, but sometimes it's a matter of if you're sending this, if you're printing it out, sending it back with your client, maybe you want to put writing on there to say the reasons why you're picking these things. You know, what are you envisioning? Why are you picking these things? Yada, yada, yada. So just another format, but you can see here, it's just a very simple board. This actually prints up on 11 by 17. I have one line here. I have one line here, simple font, and then I just kind of scaled the images. I mean, this is actually really done quite crudely, but you can see I leave a little bit of a white border in here so that the images aren't overlapping and just a couple products in here. Different ideas of presentation boards you guys can create in Photoshop. So let me just show you briefly how to do that. So you jump into Photoshop. Oh, the one thing I didn't show you guys is like how to open a template. So you will, when you're doing your mood boards, obviously you're going to want to open a new page or a template to kind of go with. So here, I usually will do 11 by 17 because my printer prints that. But if you guys just want to do a paper, you can put your size right here. Don't worry until you get into about resolution and color mode. There's RGB, which is internet. There's CMYK, which is for print, blah, 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 blah. For the purpose of what we do, I don't know if you guys are printing this, but I don't think you're going to print shop to do it. If you're printing it on your printer to show a client, that's great. I usually just show it on the screen. I don't even print them. I don't want them to take them home. I don't want them to think about it that much. I want them to sign off in the studio and then leave and just do what I say. Wouldn't it be so great if it was that easy? Anyways, so I go 11 by 17, pick your size. If you're finding that it's like, you know, 18,000 and something, you're like, what is that? That's huge. Over here, you have your little arrows. This is your drop down, so you can do pixels, inches, centimeters, millimeters, points, blah, 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 blah. Sometimes I'll use pixels, but for the most part, if I'm doing something where I'm doing a mood board or a presentation, I'm just gonna go with inches. So we're gonna go with 11 by 17. You can pick an already done document up here. I just type in what I want because usually they're not, oh, then I opened my hamburger, we're done with that. So anyways, so let's say we're doing, like, we're going to build a template. I'm just going to show you guys how to do it. So text over here, this is going to work like any text. You have to remember your color, which are these two. Whatever color's in the front is what color the text is going to be. So if it's not the color you want, if you click the color, you can put it, for the purpose of this, we're going to go with black. But if you want to do light gray, you just use this color picker. If there's a color off an image that you want, you can actually drag your mouse away from here and see how it turns into that dropper. Actually, let me just show you. Put that in there. Where did it go? Oh, it's because I had that open. Never mind. Put that in there. Okay, so say I want my text to be blue like this. So if I go in, I'm like, well, I don't want it this gray. That's not going to show up. I want it blue. I could go in here and be like, blue. That blue. Or if I know I definitely want it this blue off of here, if I just hover over it, it becomes a dropper. And if I click it, see how that jumps to where it is. And I'll be like, which blue do I want? So let's go for the purpose of this with that blue. So that's how you grab a color off an image. So if you want to feel like you're being really cohesive with whatever images you have on your template, you can always just grab a color from your image. I tend to do that. Well, I tend to use gray. Let's just be honest. I'm pretty lazy. I don't like to use bright, like black because I find it a little harsh. So text, you be on text, pick the color of the text that you want. The reason it's not showing anything right now, it's just showing a mouse, is because I'm active in this window. So click the window that we want to work on, which is the mood board. And now I have the text thing. When you put your text, what you don't want to do is click and drag. That's going to make a text binding box, and that means that the text is only going to fit within that box. So if you want text to fit a specific area, then you can do that, and it'll keep you all confined in that binding box, like that bounding box, binding box. But for the purpose of this, just click once, and then it's going to give you your little text thing. So now I can type it, and I'll hit, return or enter if I want to go down to the next line. So we're going to call this template. Hopefully that's how you spell it. And this is going to be the template that I'm going to do really quickly on how to kind of like do a presentation board. So if once you type, it's not the size that you want, you can take it while you're still in there. It's going to work like Word. Highlight it, change your size up here, be like, I want it bigger, 72. You've got bold, you've got your fonts over here. If you're in new Photoshop, see how that's changing? I can actually see what that looks like. Don't use fonts like this. Don't use fonts like this. Use basic fonts. Actually, what was on there was really good, which was Arial, bold. So we'll just go with that. So pick a font, keep it simple, and then, so I want to drag this. Now I am in auto select, so make sure you're selecting on the text so you can grab it and put that wherever you want it. And then I do actually want it bigger, so I could go into text, highlight it, change the size, or you can transform this just like you can an image, especially with text. Hold your shift key down because you don't ever skew a font, because you're never going to be able to replicate it and it's going to look like a different font. So if you want the font to look different than what it's showing you, pick a different font. Don't skew it, don't smush it, don't stretch it. Keep it the ratio that the font was there. That way when you reuse the font, it looks the same. And just pick, like I said, 2 fonts and reuse them on everything. It's your fonts for your business. It's like your brand. So this is going to be our template. So then, like, say for this template, I know that I want to do like 3 pictures and maybe some drag and drops over here of cropped out images. So if you know the format you want your pictures, you can create what we call a template. So over here, if you go down, you have this little square. You have square, rounded square, or I'm sorry, not square, rectangle, ellipse, polygon, line, custom shape, all these things. And the shortcut for it is U. And a friend of mine once told me the best way to remember that is you want to make a rectangle. And for some reason, that's all I remember when I click on that tool. So because U makes no sense. But so click on your rectangle, and then whatever shape you want the image, be like, let's say I want it to look like this. Drag it and drop it. Okay, so see how this window over here popped up? So now I have a shape. For the purpose of this, I don't want this border on it. So if you find, mine is going to default to that because I was actually using that on something. I was actually using it as a picture frame. But for this, you can see over here, I have the color of the box, which doesn't matter. You can keep that. But I'm going to take this, what they call the stroke, the outside of it, off. So if you click on that, this little scuba symbol thing here with the white line through, or the red line through the white, means no color there. So if you hover over it, it's going to tell you. So if you ever wonder, like, try hovering over it and it might tell you what it means. So if I click that, it's going to get rid of the border around it. So let's say now I have a shape. This is part of my template. Let's say I want another shape here and another shape here. I could go back under my rectangle with U for you want to make a rectangle and draw it. Or let's say I know I want two of these guys. And see how I have these pink lines? Those are guidelines that are going to snap things together. Those will automatically be turned on for your new Photoshop. And I'll show you how they work. So if I want to just repeat this shape, another way I can do it is highlight on the layer that you want. And you can do a shortcut, which is going to be Command or Control J, which I like to remember as just copy. So what it does is actually it takes that rectangle and it's made me another one. So here it says rectangle one copy. So there's actually two. You can't see two because they're sitting right directly on top of each other, but there are two rectangles here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the top one, and ooh, there it is. Now see those purple lines? See what those are doing is it's going to snap. So you can see it on the top, and in the middle, it's snapping them to being aligning with each other. I always have those on because it allows me to line things up where I want it. So now I have a rectangle here. I have a rectangle here. Let's say I want one down below here. So we can go back into our rectangle tool, or we could just copy and scale, however you guys want to do it. Draw your third one in. Do I make these line up perfectly? I could. I mean, do I? Probably not. Should you? You could. But I mean, I think that looks fine, and I just dragged it freehand. So I'm just going to leave it like that. So now I have a format to put 3 inspirational pictures. I have maybe some room to do some text here. Here, if you're doing text, you could use a binding box if you want it to stay within within the bounds of this. So if you like, oh, don't do that. So if you grab your text, it's grabbing that layer. Hold on, I gotta do it below it. And do your box. So let's say I want to write about how this room is super amazing. Now I can type in this box. The text is super big. So let's say we want this to be more like this. And we go blah, 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 blah. So we're going to type whatever you want. You can use the lorem. It's some blah, 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 blah. But you can see how it keeps that bound in there. And there's a reason mine is so spaced apart. We're not going to go into that because if you don't mess with the kerning, you're not going to have issues with that. That's another day. We'll teach you that. There's so much to learn. Anyways, so now I have a template. So now let's say I want to put a couple images in here. So let's grab an image from the internet. Let's grab this tile. No, I'm going to use that for the next one. Let's grab West Elm again. Hey, West Elm. Grab your image, drag and drop. There's your image. So now I know I want to put, and then I'm going to drag it. I'm not going to crop anything. I want this actual image. This is my inspiration for my client's room. I want it to go in this rectangle. So you can see now if I drag it over, it is behind it. Let's grab that and put that in front. And now I'm in front, right? There we go. We can see that. So the other thing you want to know is, like, normally for the templates, and I should have done this before, is I'm going to make these rectangles a different color so I know which one's which. Because right now I didn't label them because I never do. So if you're wondering what's what, you can always turn them off and on, which will show you which one is activated. Or you can go into your paintbrush thing and let's say we want a different color, but I'm going to grab it from here. I want this one to be this ugly green color. Oh, we can't do it that way. Okay, never mind. Let me show you this way. So where we turn the stroke off is going to be up here. You're going to click on this box. This box to the left of the stroke is the color of your rectangle. So if you just jump on it, it's going to change it, or no, you can't use the color picker. So for the purpose of this, this color isn't going to show, but I'm just going to change the colors of my rectangle. See, this will pop up for you. I'm just going to change them so that way I have 3 different colors. So see down here, I have 3 different colors. That way I know the one where I want to put this image is green. It makes it easy for me to identify. So go into your arrow or V and put the image. We want to put this in here. It's a different shape. So obviously if we scale to it, it's going to be a different scale because this is fatter than this. But I want this image to fit in here so it flows with the template that I'm creating, and any image can crop in there without having to do a crop. So basically what I want to do is I want to put this image into this rectangle. Well, how do you do that? Take your image over in your layer palette and put it above the shape that you want it to be in. So now I want this, when you're gonna see what I mean when I say in it in a second, this in here. On your arrow tool, you're gonna hold Option, and if you hover the line between the image and the shape that you wanna put your image in, you get this little square with an arrow going down, and it's telling you, do you wanna put this in this shape? Yes, I do. Click. And it goes, see how all of a sudden I'm cropped? So if I drag this, I am now bound by this image. So I can use this template for anything. I can put any image in here. Now that the image is in there, if I scale it, Command T, grab it, hold Shift so it doesn't distort, and I want to scale this, I know it needs to be that high to fill up that, that rectangle. But see how I can drag this around so I can find the best crop. Actually, I think that looks pretty good. Now I don't have the whole image that I'm showing it, but I feel like that is going to represent the image I'm trying to translate to my client in my template where I can write about it and then put some other images down here. That looks great. So let's say we want to do one more image. Let's, for the sake of speed, let's grab this one from West Elm again. Grab, drag, and drop. We're going to put this one into this shape here. It's the same sofa. I know it's not really that cute, but for this, it's fine. So grab V or arrow, grab, drag, drop, and now we're in to our template. So basically what I'm saying is once you create the template, you can use it over and over and over again for each client and just be like, I like 3 pictures and text and this and that. So now we're going to do for this client, we're going to put this image into this rectangle, and you can see the reason why I've changed the color is because now I know that I need this image, which is what I'm dragging, which is what's selected, to be above the orange one, because I know it needs to go in there. I don't even have to put this image over there. I just need to do it in the layers palette here, hold Option down, and it becomes that little pour thing. If you're not getting that pour tool, you have to be over this little crack of the two, the shape that you're trying to put it in and the image you're trying to put in the shape. So hold Option, get your little pour tool, click. Now it disappeared. Well, the reason it disappeared is because you only see it when it's in that shape. So I'm still active on that layer. So if no, I'm not. Okay, so I just undid. So it disappeared because we put it in there, but you might want to put it over your shape you're pointing into, because that way you're not going to lose it into like drag and pull it. If I would have dragged that over, I would have been able to see it. This is going to make it easier just in case it disappears. Make sure you're in your arrow tool, hold down Option, click, and it pops into your box. So now this one's in this box. Let's scale this, Command T, hold Shift, scale up, and boom, there is, I mean, that looks like samesies, but you can see like maybe I want to like talk more about that coffee table. So you can move this where you want it. You can make it bigger if you want to, if like this looks really ugly, but I mean, you get what I'm saying. Like maybe I want to highlight that artwork. So I'll put it like that. And then you're going to get your third image for down here. You're going to write what you want. Maybe you put a rendering, maybe you're putting your mood board, maybe you're putting images. This template allows you to do all of that. And then let's say, so you save your template. I mean, I'm assuming you guys know how to save, but just in case, files always save as, so you're not overwriting files. Save as, you want to save as template, template for presentation, and you're saving on your, I'm going to save on my desktop. Let's say, always save then save it before you put your images in there. But for when you just have your template created. So template, you're saving it. Always save it as a PSD. That's a Photoshop file. You don't want to save this down as a JPEG because you want to go back in and edit it and you want all your layers to be there. Save. So then you drag your pictures in like we just did. And let's say this is for Sarah. So then we want to save, this is what we're going to show Sarah. We're not meeting the job because it's really ugly, but this is what we want to show her. So you want to go in here, save as. So then once we do that, we're going to call it Sarah. I would save it both as a Photoshop file and a JPEG because when you show it to her, you're going to want to show it to her as a JPEG or a PNG. This doesn't matter. It has a white background. But put that, save it as a Photoshop file. So you have a working file and then save it as a JPEG, which isn't going to save all your layers. Then when you're done with that, you can close it out. I mean, if you want to reuse this without opening up the original template file, you can take these images out of here if you just grab your layer and drag it to the trash can. Then it's going to go back to your template. Oop, I double clicked it. If you do something weird and it pops up a box and you don't know what it is yet, just cancel and drag and drop. So there you go. That is basically a template. I mean, I know it's a lot of information right now, guys, but I just kind of wanted to show you what you can do once you start jumping into Photoshop. So we are almost done. Let's go back into, there we go, into our presentation. So we're going to talk about pattern overlay. Pattern overlay is kind of what I showed you on that other rendering where I do a rendering. This is an old hand rendering when I used to pretend like I was fancy and be like, look, I can draw. I don't do these anymore because I'm faster with CGI, but they're still fun. So with a pattern overlay, I don't want to sit here and draw all those little tiles out because that's going to take me 5 gazillion years to do. So this is drawn and it's actually drawn over the top in Photoshop, but I use an iPad Pro to do that. So that's another day, another lesson. But what I do want to tell you is like, if you're working in, like you can do this with your SketchUp images. If you want to show somebody what a tile looks like, you don't even have to have the rest of the image colored. Maybe you just scale the tile to fit in the SketchUp. So you can be like, this is what the pattern is going to look like to scale in the room. It's a great technique to sell a pattern to a client when if they're just looking at a tile, it's not enough for them to visualize it in the room. So like I said over here, it is the true visual. It lets them envision the patterns. I use this with patterns mostly, pretty much. I also like to say that it allows you to make digital mistakes. So what do I mean by that? Like if I think in my mind that this tile is going to look great with this other tile, then I will put it into scale for myself before I propose it, and then maybe it looks really bad. So it allows you to play in scale to the room before you present it to the client. So that way there's nothing where you walk on the job site and be like, oh, I thought that was going to look great. It looks ugly. That sucks and that's expensive. So I always say use your skills in the computer because it's much, much cheaper to make a mistake in the computer because it's just your time design-wise than it is to make a mistake in the field. So actually you can see with the hand, right? I wish I would have taken that from the same angle, but I didn't. So you can see the rendering, and then we did install that pattern. So the scale isn't perfect on the back. It's actually a little bit bigger, but for the rendering purpose, it worked. And then you can see we actually used the same tile below. So that allowed, and had I just shown the client this pattern, actually this pattern is supposed to be like a Moroccan pattern, but we did the 2 different colors to make it look more retro. It made it a very, very easy sell to the client, especially since this tile is expensive, by me just doing, by me drawing it instead of me trying to explain it with 3 tiles on the table. So pattern overlay, how do you do that? Let me show you just really quick. It's very much like your rugs. So let's go into Photoshop. We're going to do, did I grab an image? I did. So I'm going to grab this image over here and drag it into Photoshop. So here is an image. This is straight out of SketchUp. Looks very SketchUp-y, where you can see I was even playing with scale as I designed this fireplace. But let's say I put brick over here, but let's say I want to put a pattern over here and see what is it going to look like if I put all over a pattern all over this fireplace. So let's go in, grab your image of whatever pattern you want. Let's say I want this from Granada Tile, drag and drop into Photoshop, And now we have a pattern here. Now, there's a lot of different ways to create patterns. You can actually create patterns and make fills with them. I don't do that because I'm faster this way. This is my own little way. For me, it works. Maybe you're going to find a better way yourself, which is great, but I'm going to show you my way. So if you grab the tile and drag it over, now I have the tile in here. Normally, what I do when I'm adding a pattern to like a SketchUp image is I'm going to draw, like I did with the brick here, I'm going to draw the 8x8 tile on here so I know to scale where I want to shrink that to, but I don't have it on here. So Command T, I'm going to shrink this down to where I believe 8x8 would be off of my guesstimating skills. So we're going to go in right like that. So how do I make this go all over this fireplace? Well, just like before when we made an extra rectangle, you're going to do Command Active Layer. Make sure your active layer is the pattern you want. Command J. Now I have 2 of them over here in the layers. Grab it, drag it next to it. Your guides will kind of snap you. And now we're kind of building our pattern, correct? So but I still need to keep going. So Command J, I'm going to make another copy. I'm going to bring it over. Command J, I'm going to make another copy. I'm going to bring it over. Command J, I'm going to make one last copy and bring it over. You can see I'm a little bit over on the edge here. That's fine. So now I have it across the top. Well, I could sit there and keep going Command J and bringing it down one by one, but we want to be more efficient than that. So now I have a full row and sorry, I'm getting text messages. I'm just making sure nobody's house is falling down. Now that you have a full row, I just want to Command J this whole row. So over here, these are the only times you want to group your layers together. Because remember I said you want everything to be on an individual layer. Well, the pattern is one thing. Right now I have, 5 different layers of the one pattern. So if you grab into here, you want to grab all your patterns. So hold Shift down. Shift is kind of like the magic key. It does some cool things. And if you click, you can see it's going to highlight all the rest of the layers. So I want to make all of these individual layers and mush them all into one layer. Command E. I wish I had Command E, everything. There you go. Make it, I don't know, that makes no sense. Command E is the shortcut, Control E on a PC to grab and mush all your layers together. So now instead of having individual layers, I have one layer. Click, now we want to make it bigger, correct? So let's go back into Command J for just copy that row and drag below. I hope you guys are able to follow this. I know it can get confusing, but that's how you do it. So Command J. So then I could sit there and I could group these 2 together and do a bigger one down. But like I said, there's a million ways to do this. For me, I'm just going to grab, ooh, no, I'm not going to do that. Undo. Command J, make another copy and bring it down. And then let's see, if I group these together, Command E, make them one, Command J, bring them down. Now we have enough for the whole area, like that. So let's line that up. You can use your arrow keys on your keypad to nudge, as long as you're in your arrow tool up here. So I want to make these all one layer. Boom. So that's great. Now you're done, right? No, you can't. That doesn't work. So now that you have your pattern where you want it, what you can do is if you need to kind of cut stuff around it, opacity over here is how see-through your layer is. So like if you ever have anything that's glass or something like that, you want to make it see-through. Opacity, that's what the word means. Don't mess with fill. Maybe someday down the road we'll do one that I'll tell you the difference between the two. Go with your opacity. If you pull that down, you're going to be able to see behind what is going on behind it. So if it's some wiggly line or something like that you're trying to edit the pattern around, you can always just use the eraser tool and erase it. But because we just have these like harsh cuts where the mantle comes over and that, I'm just going to go ahead and trim it with the marquee tool. So I'm going to bring the opacity down. I can always bring it back up. Over here, underneath here, you're going to give your dancing ants, and you can do it in rectangles and all these good things. You can do rectangle, ellipse, row, marquee. We're going to use the marquee for the rectangle. Shortcut is M for marquee. So basically, this is just going to give you a rectangle of dancing ants. And just to keep this as simple as I possibly can, since I might be confusing you, I'm going to highlight the area that I want to trim off here. So I'm saying only The only thing that's going to be affected in this layer that I'm active on is what's in this box. I'm going to hit delete and I'm going to delete that. Now I want to do the same for the bottom, but I have my dancing ants over here on the right. So you want to deselect that I showed you before, Command D. Command D will deselect, and then you're going to want to drag your little rectangle down here and get rid of this extra down here. So drag your marquee M, hit delete, and then you want to deselect. Do the same again, marquee M, drag your rectangle where you want to get rid of the pattern in here. Click delete. Now you can see the pattern is gone there. Command D, deselect, and the last one we want to do is this area here with the mantle, delete, deselect. Now that we've trimmed all the way around it, we can bring our opacity back up, and it kind of shows, hey, that's what the pattern would look like on the fireplace. Now, let's say it's something like the rug or something like that, where it's not going to be a flat front like this where you want to show it. Maybe the pattern wraps around. You're going to use it just like your rug. Go under transform, and you can distort your pattern. So if I'm trying to make this, I know this is a really bad example to do it, but you can see how I can distort my pattern. So that way, let's say I kind of wanted the pattern, just for the sake of showing you guys, to follow this little area that's not a square. I do that with, this is going to look real bad, but you can follow the little shape that you want to put it in and distort your pattern down. See how I just put it on the side of the wall there with your distort tool, and you can distort it to put it where you want it. That way when you're showing the pattern, if it's not a perfect square, you create the square pattern and then you distort it. So once you have your general pattern, if you're going to need like two different like wallpapery type things of it to distort one and the one is facing forward, make the one pattern, the overall pattern, by copying with the just copy like I showed you guys, and then make, let me go back and show you. So before we started to trim this guy out, let's say I wanted to apply it to 3 different places. Where's my mouse? There's my mouse. Bring the opacity. So like here's my pattern, and let's say I want to apply it here and apply it here. What I would normally do is I would make 2 copies of the exact pattern I'm going to be using, go back into your arrow tool, turn one of the copies off. That's your main copy. So if you mess one up, you don't have to remake the pattern. It's still there, you just can't see it. So then drag one to where you want it, drag the other to where you want it, then distort it and copy it. And put it where you want it and move it all around. You can do that to any rendering, to any hand rendering, things like that, to any pattern. It takes practice, but just like the rugs, all it really is building your pattern and then playing with the distort, which is why I build my pattern like a layer, as opposed to, you can do a fill pattern and fill a pattern with your paint bucket tool, but I don't do it that way because I like to use it as a layer and distort it where I want it. Then, just because I'm going to show you guys, it's kind of fun to play around with these things. Say you want some translucency to it so it doesn't look like you literally cut and paste and put something above it. Maybe I want to see the texture of that brick behind this because that's impossible with this tile, but I want to see it. You can go over here where your opacity, where you were messing with it, drop this down, and you're going to see all these fun things that you can do to your layer to change it. You can bring the opacity down like we talked about, which makes it more translucent. Let me actually do it on this layer. So that I can kind of see the fireplace behind it. But then there's also ways to do the ones that I use in here. Play with all of them, but I'll use multiply. Multiply basically means you're multiplying the color of the pixels over what's underneath it. You don't need to know that. Just click on it, see what it does. See how now you can really see those dark lines because the color pixels above it has multiplied what's underneath. And it kind of looks like it's not on top of it. It's a part of the image. Then you can also do another fun one is an overlay. It's going to make it lighter. See, now you're only seeing it in the dark area here. It's just changing the way that the layer is affected on there. And then if something isn't light enough for you, you can always do screen. So screen, see how screen, the white disappeared and then it made those black lines. So those are the 3 that I use. Screen makes something lighter, overlay makes something lighter, multiply makes it darker. So, and then you can always change it back to just normal. So like say you have a sofa and it's not rendering the color you want it. If you grab your pen tool, select that and make a copy of it. So now it's one sofa on top of the other. Let me show you with this pattern. So I'm going to put this pattern on top. Say I want to make this pattern darker. So same thing with your, and like this blue isn't the blue that I want. You can go in there and use your multiply and see that is going to apply without changing the color. It's basically going to multiply the blues on top of each other, a little bit of the white, so it's creamier, but it makes it darker. So that's what multiply does. And then let's see if it shows it better with overlay. Overlay, it just kind of makes it a lot like poppier. And then screen is going to make it lighter. So those are just some little things that you guys can play with as you're working with your layers that I wanted to show you as well. So let me jump back into my slides, and here we go. So again, that is how I go through and apply. This is the same thing I did here, and I used to distort. I created the pattern, I distorted it. Then I removed the areas of the rendering that needed to show on top, and that is how I got those patterns on there for that image. So basically that is it. So we'll do a question and answer in just a second. If you guys don't follow me on Instagram, Rebecca Zajac, Facebook, Design by Number Studios, my business. You can follow my Facebook, but only if you want to see pictures of my kid. And Pinterest, I'm Design by Numbers as well. And I'm gonna put my face back on here to answer some questions. But before I do, I just want to, where is it? Where's my slide? Oh, there it is. Wait, why isn't it big? Oh, my computer doesn't like it when I'm running Photoshop because I need a new computer. There we go. Do we like this? This is fun. Okay, there we go. And I just want to mention too for Ivy, again, thank you, Ivy, for hosting, for letting me host this webinar. If you guys aren't a member of Ivy, I am the type of person who I am inherently lazy. I want everything to work easy. Ivy is amazing for interior design software. It's going to make your life easier. And then if it doesn't have functions that you want, you tell the ladies and then they make it happen like the next day. It's pretty amazing. So if you guys aren't signed up for Ivy and you want to get pricing on that, please mention this webinar. Mention Rebecca webinar for special pricing on that. So let me go into, see if I can bring my face back up for you guys. I don't know if my computer's gonna let me. I might have to, come on. So we have some questions in here. I have two computers going. I have my laptop next to me in case this isn't working. Crowdcast is here. Okay, stop sharing. Let's see if you can see me. Am I? You guys can't see me. I tried to stop sharing, but I'm just gonna go ahead and keep talking just to go through these questions really fast. Down below, whoop, there's quite a few questions. So if my face pops up, that's great. If not, then you guys are gonna keep looking at my screen because my computer won't switch over. Oh wait, hey, there I am. What's up, guys? Okay, so down below, first question, which Photoshop application are you using? Illustrator, InDesign, all of the above. The application is Photoshop. Illustrator and InDesign, it's all part of the Adobe suite. I use Photoshop for the purpose of almost everything that I do. I also use Lightroom occasionally. For you guys, if you don't own anything yet, I'd say just get the Photoshop. You can learn the other ones as you go. So basically it's what Adobe application, and it would be Photoshop. I'm using Photoshop, and I'm using the newest Photoshop Creative Cloud. Okay, so where is Distort in Photoshop? So Distort in Photoshop is under, I'm going to jump on my other computer where I have it open so I make sure I tell you. It's going to be under Edit Transform. So if you go to the top palette when you're on Photoshop, go under Edit, drag down. You have to make sure you're on the active layer or it'll be grayed out. You won't be able to get to it. So Edit, Transform, and then Distort. And that is going to be the one that you're going to be able to put your rugs where you want it and play with your patterns. Do I use this in place of AutoCAD or conjunction with? I mean, most of my drawings to scale and things like that, I actually don't use AutoCAD. I use SketchUp, but I have SketchUp Pro, so I can move my SketchUp into AutoCAD or vice versa. If I need anything with AutoCAD, I actually have a drafter. I haven't personally done AutoCAD in like 5 years. I can still do it if I need to make edits to it, but I really I don't love the program for the purpose of being a designer and illustration. So I use it in conjunction with SketchUp, which works kind of like AutoCAD, but better in 3D, in my opinion. So I might do a SketchUp something and apply a pattern to it, or edit over that, or I mean, my renderings come from rendering software that plugs into SketchUp. So, so it's kind of a yes on that. Yes, I do use it in conjunction with, but I don't personally use AutoCAD a bunch unless I'm doing architectural drawings for building permits and stuff like that. How do you import the layers? I'm not exactly sure what this question is asking, but when you drag, you don't really import layers. Everything that you bring into, all the images you bring into Photoshop become its own layer. So when you drag and drop an image into Photoshop, it becomes a new layer. You can drag layers from one window to another, which I kind of showed you guys with the sofa. If you just grab, but you don't need to drag the actual layers, just grab the image that you're dragging and it'll automatically become a layer. I hope that answered what you were asking, Gary. What size background do you start with for your mood board, or do you just randomly add pieces? Me personally, I use a 11 by 17 in inches, because if I wanted to print it, I have 11 by 17 printers, and I like to have a little bit more real estate on there. You can use, if you just have a regular printer and you might be printing it out for yourself, you can just use a regular 8.5 by 11 paper size. It's kind of whatever you guys want. But me personally, I use 11 by 17 because it kind of gives that like really long, big working area. Okay, let's see. Can you go over the background removal steps one more time? Oh man, this is recorded. So I would say go back through and re-watch it. You've got the 3 different ways. You've got the magic wand, which is W, which will, like, if it's a white background, just click it. It's going to highlight it and go. If you might have a couple different colors in there, you can use your quick select where you click and drag. That is under the same tool on the right side. If you highlight over your magic wand and hold it down, you'll see the quick select. And then the last one, the pen tool, I covered that in the video. So just go back there and kind of watch how to use the pen tool and how to crop and feather, because I can't really show you again right now. That'll take too long. So yeah, but this is recorded, so you can go back. I have a favorite tool I will share that will allow you to create a PNG. It also allows you to name the file as you save it, unlike a screenshot. It's free. So it looks like Al shared a link in here if you guys can see those questions for a tool. I mean, if that works for her and you guys want to try it, go for it. Most of the time I just do the steps that I do because it's what I'm used to and I'm fast at it. But maybe that works great. Maybe I should check it out. But the link is on the question if you guys can see that. Can you use the distort with the toolbox in Mac Picture Preview? I don't know exactly what this question is asking. If you're going to use the distort tool, you need to make sure whatever image you're distorting is in Photoshop. If you're using a Mac Picture Preview, or if you're hitting spacebar to look at your images, that's not going to distort anything because it's opening in preview. You need to make sure you grab your image and put it into Photoshop, and then you can distort your image. I hope that answered that question. How do you go back and change the small white areas like the chair arm opening or between the plant leaves? Good question, Chris. So if I were back in that image, what I would do is I would use my arrow tool and highlight the layer that I need to take out those little white images like that chair. And then for the chair, because it's just white, I would go ahead and grab the magic wand tool and just click on the white area and then click delete. And then I'm editing within the image. Just like when we removed the background before we dragged the image into our mood board, you can still edit that layer once it's in the mood board. Just make sure you're active on that layer. And then you can erase it with the eraser tool. You can grab it with the quick select. You can grab it with the magic wand. You can grab and cut with the pen. You can do anything that you did before you brought the image in. I just tend to like to do those edits before I bring it in so that it doesn't get so messy once it's in Photoshop. And last question from Kelly. When you are merging multiple pattern tiles into one layer, you said it's Control-E. What is the non-shortcut? What is the button on the toolbar? There is no button, and I believe it's been so long since I remember. I mean, it's called merging layers. I don't remember where it is because I've been using the shortcut for so long. And honestly, I would say learn your shortcuts. You don't want to go up into the up into the toolbar all the time and going back because you're going to slow your progress down. But it is called merging layers. So if you want to know where it is, just type in merging layers on Google, merging layers Photoshop. It'll show you both the shortcut and where it is, because when Photoshop updates itself, they like to change things on me too. So I don't know where it is currently, and that's how long it's been since I've done it, but it is called merging layers if you need to look that up. All right. So anything else, guys? I think that's pretty much it, and I've talked for a long time. So if you guys have any questions, you know, go to my social media platforms, reach out to me. My contact's on there. You can reach out to Ivy and play around with it. If we need more Photoshop, if you need to know more information, like I said, there's so much to learn. Let me know. I'll see if I can tailor it, or possibly we do like a boot camp if you guys are coming to Vegas for market, all that good stuff. And have a wonderful hump day. Bye.